1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
You're good? We're going flat.
Thanks, Raj.
Looks good, though.
How's the face out, Mike?
Roger.
Ending. Stand by for flying out. Feet down, 2.5. Picking up some dust. 30 feet, 2.5 down. Big shadow. 4 forward. 4 forward, just into the right little. 1.5. Contact light. Okay, engine stop. Listen, tranquility base here. The Eagle has landed.
Well, most of y'all were not around when that happened, but I was. And I remember watching as that lunar module circled around and came to the place where the first human being was going to step onto the surface of the moon. It was an incredible, incredible moment for our country, for our world. In fact, I think we have the video where Neil Armstrong took that step, and he said something very famous. You'll remember it.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
One small step for man, one giant step or leap for mankind. Incredible. Can you imagine the adrenaline that was flowing through his body? Think about what was going through his mind. If I would have been him, I know some of the things that I would have been thinking. First of all, I'd have been afraid. I mean, you're fixing to step onto the surface of the moon, a place where nobody has ever stepped before. And there had to be a certain amount of fear. I think he probably thought, don't let me fall. Because the whole world was watching. I mean, everybody all over the world was watching. And here he's stepping off of that. He's stepping off of that ladder, and he's stepping onto the moon, and he's thinking, I don't want to fall and get covered with moon dust. You know? I'm sure he probably was thinking, all right, I'm gonna do what I was supposed to do. I got to have faith in my training. I got to have faith that those that have studied this and know what I'm supposed to do, I got to have faith in them that they're going to steer me right. And the whole time that he's standing there on that ladder and he's getting ready to take that next step, and I'm sure he was afraid, and he's thinking, don't let me fall in front of the whole world and get covered with moon dust from the top of my head to the sole of my feet. And he's listening to Houston speaking in his ear, somebody that's millions of miles away, and he's thinking, all right, I got to listen in, and I got to have enough faith in knowing that my training is going to get me through this, and that I got to have faith in believing that they know what they're talking about. I mean, what was going through his mind? I think a lot of those things were. Have you ever thought about, you have 1 million Jews, maybe 2 million Jews, could be, I don't know. We don't know exactly how many. There was a lot of people that had gone from the wilderness to the side of the Jordan River, and they're camped there. And Moses is gone. A whole generation of people have died off. And now you've got these people that are there, and they've been told that they got this new land to live in, but they know there's giants there. They know that there's people there that are going to try to get them, going to try to stop them. All this is going through their mind, and they're thinking, man, this is scary. And they're thinking, man, we don't want to mess up. We got to do the right thing. And they're thinking, what if we fail, or what if we fall? And we got to listen to God because he's the one that's speaking to our ear, and we haven't been there before, but he's already been there, and he's already knows what's right. So all of these things are going through their mind. Maybe you've kind of been like that before in some place in your life. Maybe you're starting a new business, and what do I do? It's a little scary. Maybe you're recently married and you're thinking, how's this going to work out? Well, it'll work out like you make it work out. I'll tell you that. Maybe there's something going on. Maybe you're just going into middle school. I mean, we got some new middle schoolers over here. Brand new, first year going into middle school. And you're scared, and those 8th graders really look big, don't they? Nah, they're nothing. You got them. You got them. I mean, all of us can relate to these 1 million plus people that are standing on the brink of the Jordan River, and they're waiting to go forward. Now, Joshua has been chosen to lead them. And then there were priests that God was speaking through. And then there were 12 leaders that were picked out of every tribe. There were 12 tribes of Israel, and there's a leader that's been selected out of every tribe. And they'll be the ones that are supposed to tell the people, okay, it's time to move, it's time to go. So you got all of these people that are involved. Joshua, God's visionary. The priests that are God's voice. These 12 leaders in the 12 tribes, they're God's direction givers. All these people got to be, I love this word, cahoots. They got to be in cahoots with God. They got to be in cahoots with one another. They got to be ready to take that next step. You got to remember this. These people that were there at the Jordan River, this was the next generation. You see, a whole generation of people had moved on. These people were not there. We don't know that they were all there. Maybe some were, but I don't think they were there. They were really, really young. They were not there when Israel came out of Egypt and God parted the Red Sea. Remember that? And it was a whole nation of Israel that came across. These people were all born after that. So they didn't see God part the Red Sea. So they're thinking, how are we going to get across this Jordan River? And the Jordan River at that time was swollen. I mean, it's just like Escambia River is going to be now. Man, you start talking 12, 15 inches of rain, and all the creeks and everything flowing into the Escambia and the Perdido rivers. They're going to be high, and they're going to be flowing through the woods. I mean, it's going to be a muddy, roaring, rolling mess. That's the way Jordan River was at that time. It was flowing. And easily, these people could have stepped in the Jordan and be swept away and be killed. So they're looking at all of this and they're thinking, what am I going to do? Who am I going to listen to? And Joshua is God's appointed visionary, and he says, follow me. And he appoints these 12 men in these tribes, and they tell the people, get your eye on the priests. Follow the priests because they are now God's voice. And when they say move, we move with them. So it was a new experience for these people. Sometimes new experiences can be really, really scary. Can make you afraid. But they had to take that step. Neil Armstrong, guarantee you, when he took that left foot and stepped off, I'm just thinking, wow, he stepped off that thing. He's thinking, am I going to sink? What's going to happen? Scary. But it all worked out. Today, we're commissioning this team. Man, what a team. And God has given us a team of people that are going to go out there. And for some of them, this is brand new. They're brand new leaders. They've never been involved in really getting out in front before. They're brand new leaders. It's a little scary. And it takes faith because, we got to raise the money. We got to raise the manpower. I mean, it's new ground we're stepping into. takes faith. And these folks are uprooting themselves. Many of them have been in this church forever, years. And now they're all of a sudden saying, I'm willing to step out and go to a new place, take another step and cross over that Jordan River and go and do a new thing. And we're just going to trust Joshua, and we're going to trust the priest, and we're going to believe that God has appointed leaders that are going to lead us, and we're going to follow. Though we're afraid and though we don't know all the answers, we're going to believe that God has the answers, and we're going. I like that. Sometimes you're not going to get all the answers, folks. Sometimes you're not going to see God's plan laid out step by step by step. Oh, yeah, we believe in planning. We believe in knowing all the things that we can know and have a step-by-step plan as far as humanly speaking goes. But I'm telling you, there are times when things are going to happen that are out of your control that God and God alone knows. You just got to trust God. I met with a family this week. Some of y'all know the name Rocky, the exterminator. Rocky's Pest Control. I met Rocky way back in 1991. He started spraying the church and for bugs and sprayed my house and met him, and it was awesome. Well, Rocky had cancer. He passed away. This week I met with his family. They were all in my office, and they said, Pastor, we just don't know what to do. I said, listen to me. You don't have to know everything. There are times in life when you can't understand everything. You just have to know that you can trust the one that does know everything. When you can't see his hand, you got to trust his heart. And know that he is for you and not against you. He wants you to succeed. He may not keep you from going through stuff. We're all going to go through stuff. But in the end, if you will say, God, I'm just going to follow you and trust you, as these Jews had to do, then God can take you to the next place. New territory. Today, I just want to give you a couple of points. And I want us to think about, as they took that next step, what had to happen. Number one, write it down. Are you with me? If you're with me, say amen. Okay, good. Make sure you're not storm sleeping. Number one, write it down. Here we have a prepared people for a prepared time. Chapter 3 of Joshua, beginning in verse number 1. A prepared people for a prepared time. You see, typically in God's plan of action, he prepares people to execute his plan at a particular time. And I'm of the opinion, I believe, biblically speaking, that when we prepare ourselves, God will then give us the opportunity. And when that preparation and that opportunity collide, God can give us success. And the Bible says that God was willing and wanting to give them good success. Remember, we learned the definition of that. That word good success, or that phrase good success, means that God was going to give them intelligent understanding about how to live in this new land. Didn't necessarily mean that the road was going to be easy. Didn't mean that they're going to have a big house. Didn't mean they were always going to succeed. Didn't mean that at all. But it meant that if they would follow God, that God was going to give them intelligent understanding of how to walk with him in this new land. God had prepared them for this time in their life. Don't get upset with God when he's taking you through the preparation. If you want to get here, you got to go through this. I mean, shooting stars are great, but they shoot fast and they're gone. It's a whole lot better when God is preparing you and he's building your life and he's working in your life and he's teaching you things and you're learning and you're growing, and then you get to that place where you're ready to take that step. It's exactly what happened with Israel. Now write this down. Number one, he had to deal with the unbelieving Israelites first. He had to weed them out. He had to weed them out. God knew who was who. And those that were unwilling to follow God, those that were unwilling to follow Moses, or those that were unwilling to follow Joshua, they had to be weeded out. It's always true that there's going to be some people that don't get the vision. There's always going to be some people that don't see it. They don't believe in it. And they're not going to be willing to pay the price to go forward, to take the next step. Oftentimes, God has to weed them out. In this case, it was a whole generation. Right? I mean, a whole generation of people passed away. And then God could then work with the next generation. Here's what we learn from that. There's always going to be people in your life that are negative and unbelieving. There's always going to be people that are going to come along to try to dim the light of your vision, to try to stop you from getting to where God is calling you to go. It's always going to be that way. But give it time, do the right thing, and allow God to weed those people out of your life. Sometimes it's a good thing to lose somebody out of your life. Over the years, God has had to weed people out of my life. I hate to say it this way, but over time, God weeds people out of churches. Now, not everybody that leaves a church leaves for the wrong reason. Some people leave a church to go because God has redirected their vision, as we have a whole group of people here that are going to another place to start, taking hold of that vision that God has given them. That's not a bad thing. But there are some people that are always just in the negative, kickative mode. You know anybody like that? You ever know anybody that's just against everything? They're just against it. Years ago, we used to have this one guy, and no matter what we wanted to do, I'm against it. I'm against it. He's just against everything. He's just against everything. Just negative, negative, negative. And sometimes over time, God has to relocate the negative influences so that He can move the vision forward. You may have some people in your life that are really negative. They pull you down. You get around them. You listen to what they have to say, the things that they want you to do or they want you to go. You may have to say, hey, God, listen, you need to weed this out of my life. Because if you allow those people to influence your life, you'll never get to where God's trying to get you. So sometimes God has to weed people out of our lives. There's a great verse. It's found in 1 John chapter 2, verse number 19. I've had to rely on this verse many times. It says this. It says, they went out from us, but they were not of us. For if they had been of us, no doubt, they would not have gone out from us. You see what it says? It says there are times in our lives when there's people that are going to be taken out of your life or going to walk away from you. Understand, not everybody has the same vision. Not everybody has the same goal in life and wants to do the right thing. And sometimes when people are weeded out of your life, understand, hey, they went out of my life because they were not really on the same page as me. It happens in lives, it happens in families, it happens in relationships, it happens in churches. It happened with Israel. They had a whole generation of people that had to be weeded out before they could move into the new land. So understand what God is trying to do in your life. See it for what it is. Maybe He's weeding some things out of your life. It's not a negative thing. It's a positive thing. Then number 2, write this down. The faithful had to be prepared for the next step. In Israel's case, it was the next generation because the unbelieving generation had died off. So the next generation had to faithfully prepare to take the next step. Joshua chapter 3 and verse number 2. The Bible says, and it came to pass, look at this now. Here they are. They're camped by the river. And it came to pass after 3 days. So here they are, they're waiting. And God puts a particular time frame on these people. There's going to be a 3-day, if you will, revival. And things are going to get right. These people are going to get ready with God. He says, and it came to pass after 3 days that the officers went through the host of the people. Verse 3. And Joshua, or verse 5, and Joshua said unto the people, Sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. And then look at verse 6. And Joshua spake unto the priests, saying, take up the ark of the covenant and pass over before the people. And they took up the ark of the covenant and they went before the people. Here's what happened. God said to Joshua, tell the people, in 3 days we're moving forward. And then Joshua appointed these officers and all the tribes. And they went throughout the tribes. They said, okay, we want you to get right with God and we want you to get ready to move. So they started packing up their tents. They started getting their food put away. They got their kids all dressed up nice, put on their Sunday clothes or whatever they put on, and they got ready to go. And they got right with God. When it says sanctify yourself today, he was saying, children of Israel, you got to set yourself aside from the past. You got to set yourself apart from the things that would hold you back. That's sanctification. Being ready to go forward. So they got right with each other. They got right with the leadership. They got right with God. And then they got ready to move. And they're ready to go. And here's what God said. God said, I want you to follow the ark. Now, let me give you just a second. Let me give you just an update. Most of y'all know this, but let me tell you what the ark was. The ark was a wooden box that was covered with gold. Inside of that wooden box, there were 3 things. There was the stone tablets that God wrote with his finger, the 10 Commandments for Moses. It was in the ark. There was Aaron, who was Moses' brother, his rod or his staff that represented the authority of God leading through his people. And then there was a jar of manna. I like to say there was a mason jar of manna. They had a mason jar of manna. And that manna was there. What was, you say, preacher, what in the world was manna? Every day during the wilderness walk, God would provide manna for the people to eat. And they had to go out every morning and collect the manna. And that's what they ate for 40 years. And so God wanted to remind them how he had provided for them for 40 years. And God wanted to remind them that, hey, it's by the authority of leadership that God leads. And he wanted to remind them that there is a right and a wrong way of doing life. And in those commandments were right and wrong. And the whole deal was contained in this golden covered wooden box, which represents the gold of the deity of God and the wood of the humanity of God. Because you have Jesus. Who was Jesus? Jesus was 100% God and 100% man. And in this picture of the ark, you have everything. You have the authority of God. You have the provision of God. You have the right and wrong, the commandments of God. You have it all right there and pictured in this God-man, Jesus, who would lead the people to the other side. It was a picture. And listen, they had rings on the ends of the ark, and through the rings they ran these long poles. And then the priests would get on the ends of the poles, and they would hold the ark high for the people to see. And as the people were watching the picture of God, of Jesus himself, they were watching him. Wherever that ark went, that's where the people went. If the ark stopped, they stopped. Look at chapter 3, verse number 4. And the Bible says, look at this. Yet there should be a space between you and the ark, about 2,000 cubits. A cubit's about 18 inches. So you're looking at a little over 2,500 feet maybe. And by measure, come not near unto it. Listen to what God said to them. He said, by measure, I want you to be careful not to get too close to the ark, that you may know the way by which you must go. For you have not passed this way hitherto before. Now, you see the ark, and it's out here, and God says to them, you got to remember, there's 1 million Jews, 1 million people. How are they going to all see this ark at one time? So God says for them to spread out. And I can see them all locking arms. And God told them, he said, stay back from the ark 1,800, 2,000, 2,500 feet. Why? Because God didn't want them to get ahead of the ark. God didn't want to get everybody crowded around the ark, because if everybody crowded around the ark, then you were going to be looking at the back of somebody's head. You weren't going to be able to see the ark. In other words, somebody's person was going to get between you and the ark. And it's never good when a person gets between you and God. It's never good when you're supposed to be watching God and letting Him lead you. It's never good when somebody gets between you and God and you start following that person as opposed to following the ark. If your life is built around following a person, you can get off track. If your life is built around what somebody can do for you or what somebody has done for you or a leader in your life, and you hold that person in such high esteem that if that person were to fall, you fall. I'm telling you, you're watching the wrong thing. You cannot watch a person. Now, it's okay to have leaders in your life that give direction and can speak into your life. That's good. That's okay. We all need coaches. We all need people that will help us get through. We all need those kind of things. That's all good. But I'm telling you, when it comes to the direction that you're going in your life, you cannot look at another human being. You've got to look only to Jesus. So stand back. Don't get ahead of the ark, because then you'll be telling God, come on, follow me. I'm going this way. You follow me and bless me as I go. See, that's wrong. No, you stay back. You let God get out front. You're able to see God's movement because you're not letting anybody get in between you and God, and you're waiting. And when God moves, you move. And you're ready to take that next step that's going to take you to the place that you ought to go. So be careful. I would ask you the question, is there anybody in your life that's blocking the view of God right now? Let God weed that person either to the side or out. Number 3, the leadership had to be prepared. Chapter 3 and verse number 7, God said to Joshua, I love this. Look at chapter 3 and verse number 7. The people were prepared. Some were weeded out. Now you got the faithful people ready to go, and the Lord now is preparing the leadership. And the Lord said unto Joshua, this day, today, I'm going to begin to magnify you in the sight of Israel, that they may know that as I was with Moses, Joshua, I will be with you. There was a transition of leadership. And God said to Joshua, Joshua, I'm going to raise you up. Please listen to me. I'm going to raise you up. And as I raise you up, it will be obvious to the people that they are to follow your vision. I believe that when God raises up leadership, it becomes obvious. But I don't think that leadership should push their way to the top. I think they should allow God to raise them to the top. I think about David. You know, little David, I love little David. Little David, he was the run of the litter. Little David was the youngest in the family. He was the smallest kid. He was the shepherd boy. I mean, come on now. He was a little old bitty thing, and to look at little David, you'd think, ain't no way that guy's going to become anything for anybody, much less be a leader, be the king of Israel. Come on, look at David. The truth of the matter is, I think God has a problem with tall people. Can I get a witness? Short people. Used to be a song about us, right? Short people got no, anyway. You know what? I think God can work through anybody, but you know, it's something special when He takes someone that should not be viewed as a leader and He turns that person into a dynamo, a leader. And all the people can see it. Not because he's like Saul was. Saul stood head and shoulders, the Bible says. I mean, Saul had all the leadership skills. He had a great way of talking to people. I mean, it's awesome, you know, when people are great leaders and they got all the stats to go with it. All that's wonderful. But it's so amazing when God takes somebody and He just amazes everybody with that fact that, hey, God's using that guy. Yeah. Joshua was second in command. Moses was number one. And now Moses is gone. And number two, Joshua, he now steps up and God says, people are going to, when they see you, Joshua, they're going to think of Moses in his good days. They're going to think about the leadership of Moses and how he followed after me. You remember Moses, one of the top 5 leaders in the whole Bible. And now Joshua is going to become that person. And God said, I'm going to make it happen. So Joshua says, Lord, I'll follow you. You show me what to do. It's so awesome. What happened next? Look at verse 13 of chapter 3. Look at this. It shall come to pass as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests that bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth, shall rest on the waters of Jordan, that the waters of Jordan shall be cut off from the waters that come down from above. And that doesn't mean rain, that means from the north. So the waters from the north coming down, the Jordan River flowed north to south, flows in down to the Salt Sea or down into the Dead Sea, flows down, and so the river on the north side stands up. God said going to stand up. The Lord of all the earth shall rest in the waters of Jordan, that the waters of the Jordan shall be cut off from the waters that come down from above, that they shall stand upon a heap. God said there's going to be a heap of water standing up there. Look at this. Next verse. And it came to pass when the people removed from their tents to pass over Jordan, that the priest bearing the ark of the covenant, we've already talked about that, went before the people. Now they're walking out in front of the people. And as they bear the ark, they were come unto the Jordan River. And the priest had to say, this is God leading us. We're going to believe. And so they stepped into the water. And as the feet of the priest stepped into the water, the brim of the water, the Bible says, look at this, for the Jordan overfloweth all its banks at this time, just like the Escambia is fixing to do, that the waters which came down from above stood and rose up as a heap from the city of Adam, from Zarethan, and those that came down toward the sea of the plain, even the salt sea, failed and were cut off, and the people passed over right against the Jordan, or against Jericho. Wow. And as the priests that bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the midst of the Jordan, and all the Israelites passed over on dry ground until all the people were passed clean over. So all the people watched as the priest took the ark and began to walk, and as the priest stepped into the water, boom, it stood up. And then boom, on this side, and we're talking way apart here because you got 1 million people got to pass through. So we're talking as far as the eye can see, the water's standing up. As far as the eye can see to the south, the water's standing up. And don't you like this? I love this. It wasn't even muddy. Now, I've walked on lots of places where water has dropped out. Y'all know that my lake, maybe y'all don't know that, but it last September, my 5-acre lake, Hurricane Sally came through and knocked the dam out, and I lost all my fish and all my water. It went completely dry. The whole pond went dry. But it didn't go dry. It went muddy. That bottom of that pond was so muddy. And I can remember I thought, wow, this is a good time for me to go out there and walk around and cut down some stumps and move stuff around, get it ready for the fish and all that kind of stuff. And man, I took a step out there and whoosh. Now, I mean, for me, I sunk up to my knees. For y'all, it was your ankles, but that's a whole other story. Literally, I had a guy out there working on a tractor. He sunk his tractor. I mean, sunk that sucker all the way down, covered with mud. Not the Jordan. God not only stopped the water, but God dried it up. I mean, bone dry, hard as a rock. What a miracle. God was saying, I want you to know, there is nothing too hard for me. There's no obstacle that I can't overcome. I will dry up those places where you need to walk. You just need to step off that ladder, Neil Armstrong. You just need to step off that ladder, those that are going to North Pace. You just need to step off that ladder, those that are starting a new business. You just need to step off that ladder, those of you that are just brand new married and you're just learning what this is all about. Step off this ladder and have faith. Yeah, it's going to get scary. Yes, sometimes you're not going to know what to do, but step off that ladder, step into that Jordan, and see that God will dry it up for you, and God will lead you across the Jordan as long as you keep your eyes on Jesus. Joshua, wow, he became like Moses in the eyes of the people. Notice chapter 4, and I'm finished. Well, I'll maybe go chapter 5 for one verse or two, but write this down. After the people got across Jordan, then the people were reminded to remember. Chapter 4, verse 1 through 7. Look what God said to them. He said, "And it came to pass when all the people were clean passed over Jordan that the Lord spake unto Joshua, saying, okay, here's what you need to do. You need to tell the people to remember. Take you 12 men out of the people, one out of every tribe, and command them, saying, take you hence out of the middle of the Jordan River, out of the place where the priest's feet stood firm, solid ground. I want you to take 12 rocks, 12 stones. These were big. And you shall carry them over with you. Leave them in the lodging place where you shall lodge this night." God said, I want you to go over Jordan. I want you to have 12 men to pick up 12 big old stones. Then Joshua called the 12 men whom he had prepared of the children of Israel, out of every tribe a man. And Joshua said to them, "Pass over before the ark of the Lord your God in the midst of the Jordan, and take you up every man a stone upon his shoulder." These were not little bitty rocks like this. These were big old big stones, according unto the number of the tribes of the children of Israel. That this may be a sign among you, that when your children shall ask their fathers in time to come, saying, what is this statues? What do these statues mean? Wow. Then you shall answer them, that the waters of Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it passed over Jordan, the waters of Jordan were cut off. And these stones shall be for a memorial unto the children of Israel forever. God said, I want you to take those 12 stones and I want you to make a statue so that whenever somebody sees the statue, they will be reminded of what I did for Israel when I parted the Jordan River. Listen, folks, it's a good thing to remember good things that God has done for us. You know, you do your history study and you'll discover that whenever a wicked dictator moves into a place and takes over a people, you know what they do? They try to remove any remembrance of the former good life. That's what they do. They want to take away the teaching. They want to take away the history. They want to take away the value system. They want to change the currency. They want to change everything they can, anything that would remind the people of a former good thing in their life. They want that gone because they want to be, the new dictator wants to be all-powerful. They don't want any semblance of remembrance of the way things used to be. Statues matter. They matter. Values matter. Teaching of children about right and wrong, those things matter. And whenever we allow ourselves to take those things away and to try to neutralize a place, I could say our country, if we try to neutralize our country till everything is just kind of the same and that there's no right and wrong and there's no remembrance of where we came from or who we're supposed to be, when we see that happen, I'm going to tell you something, we're headed down the wrong road. It's not a good thing. And God said to Joshua, I want you to remember. Look at verse number 9. In verse number 9, Joshua set up the 12 stones in the place where the feet of the priests which bear the ark of the covenant stood. And they are there as a reminder to this day. It was a reminder to remember where they came from. Sometimes we need to be reminded, folks, where you came from. Don't ever think you're so big. Remember where you came from? Remember when you didn't have what you have? Remember when you just couldn't do what you do? Don't ever forget where you came from. Oh, these people that get all, successful and they forget where they came from. Oh, come on. Don't be like that. Don't forget where you came from. They couldn't forget where they were going, so they were reminded where they're going. And they couldn't forget who brought them there and who was going to lead them forward. It's interesting to note that when they crossed over on dry ground, God told them to eat corn in the new land. Don't eat manna anymore. Have you ever thought about that? Why did that happen? When they got to the other side, you know what God said to them? He said, I don't want you to eat that manna anymore. I want you to now eat corn. Well, if they were going to eat corn, that meant they're going to have to plant it and grow it. Right? It meant God said to them, you're going to have to work in this new place, in this new land. You're stepping in and I'm going to bless you and I've given it to you. But I'm going to tell you something, it's going to take work to maintain it. And God is always in favor of us receiving the free gift of salvation. Salvation is a gift. You don't earn it. You don't work for it. You don't keep your salvation by working for it. But listen to me. Sanctification is a work of grace. When we work and serve God and we do the right thing, God sanctifies us. He grows us. He develops us. So staying right with the Lord takes work. Not salvation. It doesn't take work. It takes faith. Trusting Jesus. But these people had to work. If they're going to eat in the new land, they had to plant the corn. They had to weed the weeds. They had to fertilize the ground. They had to water the ground. They had to work at it. Because God said, I'm not going to give you the new food in the new land. Wow. I think God is in favor of us working and asking Him to bless the hard work. That's true in ministry. It's true in a business. It's true on your team. It doesn't matter. It's true. If you're going to get ahead, you got to ask God to bless your life and be in right relationship with Him, but you got to work at it. God's not going to just lay it at your feet. And finally, look at Joshua 5, verse 13 through 15. Don't miss this. It came to pass when Joshua was by Jericho that he lifted up his eyes and he looked, and behold, there stood a man over against him with his sword drawn in his hand. I like this. Joshua said, are you for us or are you against us? Joshua goes over. He's there by Jericho, which is the enemy territory. And there's a man standing there with his sword drawn. And Joshua says to him, are you for us or are you against us? Joshua says, if we got to fight, we're going to fight. If I need to fight you, I'm going to fight you. You just tell me, are you for me or against me? Because if you're against me, we're going to fight. Man, what a man. And he said, hold off, Joshua. Back up. Everything's all right. He said, I'm the captain of the host of the Lord. Am I now come? And Joshua fell on his face to the earth, and he did worship, and he said unto him, what saith my Lord to me? In other words, okay, what do you want me to do? And the captain of the Lord's host said unto Joshua, loose the shoes off your feet, for the place where you're standing is holy. Who was that person that confronted Joshua by Jericho? Well, there's two views. Some think it could have been Michael or Gabriel, the archangels. Some think it was Jesus himself. You say, preacher, who do you think it was? I think it was Jesus. You see, we don't bow down to worship angels. We bow down to worship Jesus. Angels might fight alongside of us, but they don't go before us. Jesus does. And I think as Joshua stood there, he was standing at the feet of Jesus himself. It's called an Old Testament theophany. T-H-E-O-phany. As close as I get to spelling, okay? Well, I spelled it and I can tell you what it was. Here's what it was. There were points in the Old Testament where God himself showed up in human body. You remember when the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego went into that fiery furnace? Remember the king looked down there and said, wait a second, we only threw 3 in there, but I see 4. What happened? Jesus showed up and walked with them. I'm going to tell you something. I believe this was Jesus himself in an Old Testament appearance to Joshua. And he was saying to Joshua, Joshua, thus far, you've done the right thing. You've taken the right steps. I want you to know, as you follow me, I will fight for you.